Welcome! Hello! Nice to see you all. It's a bit unusual for me. I'm used to just having like one camera and no people. It's a bit different. You all look a lot bigger in real life. So the point of this workshop, really, I called it Expanding Your Blues Vocabulary, but the idea was to try and present a series of ideas to try and expand the things that you can play. And blues is essentially a language, and it's really, really important. It's one of the key things if you want to get into playing blues. You've got to understand that it's a language. So I'm going to talk a bit about scales, but it's really important that you don't think that the scales are the whole answer. The language is the answer. And I often use these little analogies that scales are like alphabets. So if you were if you were a foreigner and you're learning English and you learned how to say the alphabet, and you went into a shop and you went A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, they'd probably understand that you're speaking English, but they wouldn't know what you wanted. So it's only at the point where you start putting those letters together into a word that people actually start to make sense of it, where you can really actually communicate an idea. And over the years I've had lots of students say, but I don't want to learn licks because everyone, then I'll sound like everyone else. And that's kind of the point. If you think of music as a language and doing solos as like poetry, the great poets didn't make up their own words. Otherwise we wouldn't understand them. The great poets take the words that we all know and that we all use all the time, and they put them together in a way that's really beautiful and that affects us somehow. So that's the point. That's why Eric Clapton's using all of the B.B. King licks and Robert Johnson licks. They're not new, they're not his licks. Right? They're just words that he's picked up. And he's putting them together in a really beautiful way. And that's really important. So as I'm talking about scales, I want you to remember that I'm showing you different notes, different alphabets, but you still have to search for the words. Right? Now, the best way to learn the words is by listening to the original recordings of the great masters, right? Albert King is going to teach you Albert King licks much better than I could. However, using sites like mine or using whoever on the internet or a book of licks will help you recognize the words. So when you go to transcribe a solo by Eric Clapton or Albert King, whoever, you kind of go, oh, I recognize that word. That's how I make that sound, the sound of that word. Does that make sense? So learning words is really the key thing. What I found with students a lot over the years is that people are a bit scared, particularly kind of beginners and early intermediate players, of stepping outside of the pentatonic scale. So they're only learning words that are to do with the pentatonic, and if they see a note that's outside of that, they're scared to play it. They don't know what, they don't understand it. So that's kind of the point of these scales and stuff that I'm going to take you through today, is show you what the different scales are, what the different options are, how you can cheat it, how you can look for language within each of those different things. Now, just to prove my point and make sure that you're 100% with me on the scales versus language thing, we're just going to play a couple of choruses of a really straight 12-bar blues in the key of A. All of the stuff we'll do is in the key of A. And for those of you who weren't in the room before, if you want to go on your smartphone to justinguitar.com/UKGS, it'll give you the scale diagrams of each of the things that I'm talking about, so you might find that handy. If you want to grab a guitar out and play some of the stuff, the ideas, particularly later on when we talk about the clashes of things, that would be cool. You're welcome to do that. So, should we just play it? And this is my friend Bonzo, who I only roped into this at the last minute, rather than using the computer and playing backing tracks. So I asked him to come and give me some rhythm to play to. So, 12-bar blues, I'm going to first of all just play the scale. The way I hear a lot of students come into workshops and stuff, and they just play the scale up and down, and it's okay, it doesn't sound horrible, but it's not musical. And then I'm going to just pick one of my favourite Albert King licks, and I'm going to try and do a whole solo with that one lick, and hopefully, as long as I don't muff it up, it'll sound better, and you'll get the idea that the language is kind of, slightly cooler than playing scales. Yeah? Sweet. wouldn't hear Eric Clapton doing that, I doubt. So, same thing again. Now I'm just going to pick on this one of my favourite licks. Hopefully you like the second one better. Right? And the idea there, I just picked literally one little lick that I nicked off Albert King 20 or 30 years ago. You hear Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eric Clapton, everyone uses that lick. It's like the or and, if we're going back to our language analogy. It's a really, really common word. But you can hear that just by manipulating that one word, it says, oh, he's speaking blues language. I know blues, I like blues language. And you can communicate something. And it's not just about learning licks. There is, of course, a kind of a deeper level to the whole music thing. I'm not suggesting that the whole thing is just about learning licks. But if you don't know any words, you're never going to be able to express yourself in a language. So the first step is definitely getting a handle on words. For every scale that you learn, you need to know words that make sense that you can use. And if you just learned 5 words but could use them really effectively, that's far better than knowing loads of alphabets. You know, when I used to teach I was the admissions guy at the Guitar Institute for a long time, and I'd get guys coming in that could play all of the scales, all of the modes, all of the fancy stuff, but they couldn't solo at all, because they'd just mistaken learning alphabets for learning words. You need the words if you're going to communicate something. So that's step 1, and that's the minor pentatonic, was what I was mucking around with there. Everyone familiar with the minor pentatonic? Yeah, everyone, hands up? You know the minor pentatonic? Good. Okay. So, the next little scale that I want to introduce is the blues scale. Now, the blues scale is exactly the same as the minor pentatonic, but it has one additional note. Okay? It's the note, the flat 5. This one. Now, it's not quite an equal member of the alphabet family. It's a little accent, it's a bit of a spice, or something that you can use sometimes, but if you use it too much, it gets sour pretty quickly for the listeners. So again, it really helps if you learn it in the context of some licks, rather than it being like a scale that you run up. It doesn't sound horrible again, but it's not communicating much. Whereas if you learn just a lick or two, whatever, where you're using it in an authentic manner, you're using just a note, it's just a spice, it's a little something you can add in there, rather than it being the whole focus of what you do, it becomes much more musical. Again, removing yourself from playing a scale to you using a note from the scale, you can name it, that's good, it's good to know stuff, but actually music's more than that, it's about learning the language. So that would be the next one, and for that particular scale, the blues scale, you can use that over the whole of the 12-bar blues. And that's, again, the minor pentatonic works for the whole 12-bar blues, the blues scale works for the whole 12-bar blues. And I'm also going to go through another one, which is, for some of you, possibly scary, so don't everyone leave at once when I use this Greek word. It's the Dorian mode. Oh God, modes, I can't do modes, they're all complicated. They're not, at all. Now, I saw loads of students playing the minor pentatonic and getting it wrong and going and putting their third, like if you're in the key of A, you're putting your third finger down in the 7th fret of the 2nd string, and they go, oh, wrong note, oops, sorry, but actually that note is really cool in a blues, really cool. So is the 9th of the scale, the 9th note in the scale of A major would be this note B on the thinner string. So a really good exercise, if you're not familiar with this sort of stuff, is introducing those 2 notes only on the thinnest 2 strings and mix it in with your minor pentatonic scale. Right? So let's just do a blues. I'm going to do, first chorus, I'm going to really hammer out the blue note, just so you can hear it in context of some licks. Then the second round of the 12-bar cycle, I'm going to really start hammering this note here, the F sharp and the B in the key of A. So the 6th and the 9th. If you look at the little diagram, just so we're all on the same page, you'll see there's the minor pentatonic, that's the first one. You scroll down a bit, we've added in this blue note. And then on the next diagram down, you can see there it says the Dorian mode. And we're just really focusing on the thinnest two strings. I'm going to talk about these other two nasty ones down there in a second, but let's just play through those. So, first of all, the flat 5, just incorporating it into some licks. Yeah. So hopefully you heard that first time really hammering this note, the flat 5. Used it in the two different pattern points in that pattern that I've given you. And then the second time, you could all hear the difference in the sound of the language, right? As soon as I started playing the 6 and 9, it's different. It's not better or worse, it's just a different kind of part of the same language. But again, it's about learning the words. Now, I have to excuse all of this talking, but I feel like this stuff's valuable. If you're learning a new language, you have to concentrate on the words when you first learn them, right? When I go to France and try and speak French, because my French is abysmal, I have to really concentrate on it before I go somewhere where I'm going to use it. So I'll go to the shop and I'll be like, right, fine, I want, je voudrais tell, okay, I want some coffee, or café. Je voudrais un café, por favor. Right? So I have to really think about what the words are and then try and put it together. It's a real conscious thing. But the point is to be able to just do it, just to speak it without having to think about it, right? If you're learning a new language, you don't want to think about it. So it's exactly the same with the blues language, that you have to think about it for a little while and consciously try to play those words until they start to happen by themselves. And when you do it enough times, they become instinctive and you just play them. Just the same as I'm having a conversation with you guys now, but I'm not thinking about every word or even every sentence that I'm saying. The ideas just pop into my mind and they come out. And that's what you want with your music playing, I think, not just for blues, but for most music styles. You want the things to just happen naturally. And when people talk about people playing from the heart and all of this sort of stuff, I think that's kind of what they mean. It's not like the heart, it's playing instinctively and naturally rather than having to think all the time. Right? So, the two takeaways from this. One, don't be afraid to think at the beginning. So when you're learning a lick, and I still do it, I'm still learning licks all the time when I'm transcribing, or most commonly for me, I'm listening. So I'm listening to some music, I hear a lick and I go, oh man, I've got to nick that lick. So next time I'm at the studio, I make a note on my phone, and then I get to the studio and I'll look up that lick, learn how to do it, transcribe it, write it down, and then I practice it over and over again until I can play it. And then I try mixing it up with all of the other licks I know, and hopefully it'll start coming out naturally. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes there are lots of licks that I've learned that I really like that haven't connected with me on some sort of deeper level, and I don't really know why, but they just haven't. So they never come out no matter how much time I spend practicing them. It's frustrating, but it's just part of the deal. You have to just keep on learning licks. Try and learn licks that you really love, because that's one thing I've definitely noticed. The licks that I really like are the ones that tend to come out more when I'm playing than the ones I feel like I should know. Right? So try and use that as a guiding point for when you're learning your blues songs at all. Find the licks that you really love, write them down. Don't be afraid of writing your favourite licks down, practicing them, and doing a 5-minute jam session where you consciously go, I'm using this lick, I'm using this lick. Because that's not the point, that's not what Clapton's doing. But if you do it enough, they'll just start to come out by themselves, and that's a really, really cool thing. Any questions on this so far? I feel like I'm covering a hell of a lot of ground, and I've only got, well, I'm halfway through. Yeah? Everyone's with me so far on the language thing and using the minor pentatonics? No? Yeah, okay. So, the next step up in music is where you don't think about the key anymore, and you think about the chord instead. Right? Now, for some of you, this will seem a little bit of a strange step up, because when you're first learning or encountering blues, you just think in the key. Like, I'm jamming in the key of A, I know my A minor pentatonic or my blues scale or Dorian mode or whatever, and I use that. But longer term, if you keep exploring the blues, you find that the really good guys are using different licks on different chords. Right? There are notes that only sound really good on some chords that don't on others. And that's really important kind of bit to figure out. And the reason I'm explaining it here is because if you just start collecting licks that you really like, you might find one that doesn't fit over a certain chord, and then you think, oh, Justin, he was lying. He told me I could learn those licks and they don't sound good. Right? So I want to explain how that works and why that works. And part of that is understanding that the blues is completely wrong, and the theory of the blues makes no sense at all. Right? You think about what we're doing. We're playing the minor pentatonic scale over major chords. That's a bad idea. If you think, like, if you imagine yourself playing this A major chord, right, which would be the full chord, the first chord in a blues in A, and you think the minor pentatonic scale, that's got the 5th fret and the 7th fret on the 3rd string, the note C and the note D, right? But the chord A has the note C sharp, which is the note in between those two notes. And if you put them together, I'm going to move it to the key of G, just so that you can hear the two notes together. The major 3rd in the key of G is the note B. I'm going to play that as an open string. And there's the B flat from our minor pentatonic. So if I play that note over, there's my B note from the G chord. Is that sounding pretty cool or not? Sounds funny like that, but if I change the context ever so slightly and go, that is the sound of the blues, right? It's the clash of this minor scale over a major sound. Theory says it should be wrong. I studied at a classical conservatoire, and they all thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever, that people played minor scales over major chords. It doesn't make any sense, but it does, because our ears tell them it sounds good. Right? So even from all of the theory and all of the stuff I'm about to tell you, if it sounds good, it is good. Because there are times that you'll play stuff that's theoretically wrong, but it sounds great, and therefore it's fine. And there's times that you'll play stuff that's theoretically correct and it sounds horrible, and you have to just stop doing it at that point. Right? Because that's just how music is. Okay? It's an audible, it's a listening thing. So, what do we do about this note? This major 3rd note in the key of A. So if we've got those and we really want to play out of the chords and kind of display the harmony, we probably want to play that, because it's a good note. Now, it's not in the minor pentatonic scale, it's not in the blues scale, it's not in the Dorian mode, but it is in an A7 arpeggio, right? And at some point in your journey studying the blues, you're going to move from playing scales over the whole thing to playing arpeggios over each individual chord. And the first time you do it, it's very much likely going to sound like... Okay, it sounds not very bluesy, right? It's kind of, again, it's okay, it's like playing the scale, it's a different alphabet. But the really key thing here is the movement of this C sharp note, which sounds fantastic over the A7. But if you play that note over a D7 chord, it sounds really rank. Right? That's like really, really bad note, okay? So, if in your lick journey you encounter this note, the note C sharp in the key of A, that lick or that scale or whatever will only work over the A. It won't work over the D. Really good examples of that are things like... That's a really, really super common lick, but it goes... It's fitting over the A. And if you play it over the D, it sounds awful. If you want to play that lick over the D, you have to move it so it fits over the D, like... I'm going to play that lick again over the D, so just do 4 bars of A, 2 bars of D, like a slow change blues. So I'm going to really target that note over the A, and then I'm going to really target it again over the D, just because I want to convince you. Right? I don't want you going, oh yeah, I'm doing that stuff because Justin told me to do it. I want you to hear it and go, oh yeah, that sounded really horrible, right? Here we go. Really not a happy sound. So that's one of the key step-ups, just that one note in being able to make changes, is being able to target that note when it's on the A and then not play that note when it shifts to the D. Like I'm talking A being the 1 chord and D being the 4 chord, okay? For those of you that missed it, I'm going to stay in A. Now, if you follow this arpeggio idea through, so you're playing mostly arpeggio notes all the way through, you tend to be playing, you play all of the harmony on your own, and you don't even really need accompaniment. So if I'm just going to play a 12-bar blues now all of the way through without any rhythm, and I'm hoping, if I do it reasonably well, that you'll hear the chord changes without them being there. Does that make sense? Whale song. Anyway, okay. So here's yeah! Okay, I'm going to try and play over that a little, yeah. A 12-bar blues in A, and hopefully you'll hear the changes there. Did we get there? They seem to stop for a second, which is good. Anyway, so if you're really outlining the arpeggio as well and hitting the chord tones when you need to be, then actually it enables you to make the changes without the rhythm having to do it for you. Sorry. It's just funny. Now, there's a few reasons for me telling you about this thing. So the first thing was making sure that when you transcribe songs, that if you come across a lick that's got that note in it, that you're able to treat it accordingly. That's the first thing. Second thing, a lot of people ask me about the major pentatonic scale.
That's it.
That's definitely not the major pentatonic scale. Yeah, but does it gent? Yeah, I don't know. I guess it probably does. I'm guessing that's Misha, who's an exceptional guitar player, but not in the middle of another workshop. Anyway, so the major pentatonic scale, which is the next one down on the little, if you're on the website scrolling down, the major pentatonic has this note, the C sharp. So I'm imagining many of you, who's familiar with the major pentatonic? Hands up. Kind of half, and they're all a bit like, oh, maybe on that one. So most people know the major pentatonic is using the same shape as the minor pentatonic, down 3 frets. So if you've got minor pentatonic here, they go, or major pentatonix this one. And that's correct, it's the same notes. But the big problem that you have if you do that is that you're likely to play all of the licks from the minor pentatonic down 3 frets, and that sounds horrible. It's just not, you're not targeting the right notes. The notes that you accent, that you stop on, aren't going to be good notes. So it's really important that if you play using that shape of the major pentatonic scale, that you understand that none of the licks that you used before work. So if you know this lick, another one of those really common blues words, if you play that lick over the A chord but down here, if you give me an A shuffle, just stay on A. So here on they're good notes to use, just not in that order with those licks. So I would strongly recommend, if you want to get into the major pentatonic, that you look at pattern 2 of the major pentatonic, which is really similar. You can overlay it against the minor pentatonic, and 2 of the notes are the 2 notes that we got from that Dorian mode thing, this 6 and the 9 here. The big difference is this note. It's this C sharp. It's got our C sharp in there. Okay? Everyone follow me now? Aside from the heavy metal backing. I can't even play in the right key with it because it's C. he's changing to that would have been kind of fun, jamming blues to gent. So if you're going to get into using, if you use this second pattern of the major pentatonic, again, I recommend that you just do little groups of this stuff, rather than trying to think like playing that whole major pentatonic. Just look at the thinnest 3 strings. Because there's loads of mileage you can get just on using this. That much. Loads of mileage. But the thing to remember is that it only works over the first chord, over the A. When the rhythm changes to the 4 chord, to the D chord, you have to go back to the minor pentatonic scale. Otherwise it sounds really bad. Right? You can follow it and play A major pentatonic over the A, and then D major pentatonic over the D, and then back to the A. Most people don't seem to do that. The great blues masters don't tend to use it that way. Right? Some country guys do. But in blues, you tend to use it just on the 1 chord, and on the 4 chord, you go back to the minor pentatonic. Okay? So let's do a slow change blues in A. So does everyone know what slow change and fast change is? Quick change blues? Okay, so in a 12-bar blues in the key of A, especially when I'm demonstrating an idea like this, it's important that he knows whether bar 2 will change to the D or not. So does it go A, D, back to A? That would be called a quick change blues. If we either say like a standard one, or no quick change, or a slow change even, means that we'll stay on the A for 4 bars at the start. Okay, so worth figuring that out with whoever you're jamming with before you begin. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the major pentatonic for the 1 chord, and then as soon as he moves to the D chord, I'm going to move back to the A minor pentatonic. Okay, and then back to the major pentatonic when he gets back to the A. Yeah? 2, 3, 4. Can you hear the way that it suddenly, I'm making a change with the music instead of on top of the music? And I think that's a really interesting thing. My mum said it once when I was at a gig, that a guitar player that we were both watching, she said, this guy sounds like he's with the band and the other guys sound like they're on top of the band. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it. If you're thinking, I'm playing this scale and I'm going to play all my licks in the A minor pentatonic scale for the whole blues solo, it becomes very insular. You're thinking about your own stuff, your own playing, your own licks, everything's about you. But what the audience hears is the combination of you and everyone else. So if you're making the changes with the rest of the band, it kind of forces you to be listening to the whole thing and not just to yourself. And that makes the music better, not just you as a guitar player better, but it makes what the audience hears better. And that's a really, really important little bit of the puzzle. So that's the major pentatonic and how to use it if you're using a blues. So it just happens on the one chord and that's all. Now, I've run out of time already, but there's two things. I'm last, right, so I can keep going for a bit, unless we get interrupted by the heavy metal stuff. Okay. So there's two other things that I want to share with you. The first is, I've just been talking a lot about, scales and notes and licks and words and all very kind of technical things. But we know music is a really emotive language. So something that you might like to try, and this is pretty powerful, you definitely want to do it when you're on your own, and that is to try and tap into some really miserable experience in your life and try and express it out the guitar. Now, I know that, just bear with me for a second, right? A few of my students joke about it, calling it the dead cat story, right? Because it's all, if you can find something really shitty in your life and you can try and express it out the guitar, it's a pretty heavy thing, right? It feels sad, miserable. You should feel that. And when you play music for real, like blues or whatever, you don't have to put yourself into that place. But I'm fairly certain that if you've experienced that a few times, it somehow opens a channel where you can express yourself through music better. I can't guarantee it, but a lot of my students over the years have said that that's a really valuable thing, a release, if you like. A lot of people use music as a release for stress, for work, or whatever, So if you put yourself, like I said, don't do it when there's people around, because it can be pretty emotionally overwhelming. But give it a go, because you might find that it opens up a part of your musical expression that you've never got in contact with before. And if you're really angry, it'll sound like that. It's like my ex-wife. I would suppose. So that was one thing. So give that a try. But like I said, it can be a pretty powerful thing, so be careful. The last thing that you've got on that web page is it's got the A7, D7, and E7 arpeggios in full, overlaid over the minor pentatonic scale. So if you're a blues player and you're used to playing the blues in a minor pentatonic-y kind of way, and then suddenly you launch into arpeggios, it sounds really weird, fake, jazzy, but not in a nice way. It just sounds mechanical, and it's, I don't know, always weird. So you should always try to incorporate the things that you know, the language that you're comfortable with, which will be the blues and the minor pentatonic and the Dorian, with some of these new tools. Okay? The other danger is that if you keep it separate, you'll go from playing your minor pentatonic-y sort of stuff, and then you'll switch, and you'll suddenly be playing arpeggios, and then you switch back. And it just doesn't sound natural to people listening to you. Right? You need to try and incorporate those things again so it becomes instinctive rather than something that you're thinking about. I just can't get over this. It's really weirding me out. Maybe it's not as loud for you, but... No, it is good. Okay. So, that's it. That's all of the points on my list. So, I want to recap because I've talked about a lot of stuff. Originally, I thought I had an hour, right? So I had in my mind like I was going to try and demonstrate each one of these ideas a lot and hopefully get some of you playing. But so, minor pentatonic scale, or all of the scales are alphabets. Treat them as such. Make sure you learn lots of words. The best way to learn words is through transcribing off the original masters, not little Tasmanian kids, right? Get it off the real dudes. They play it in a way that we all want to copy. So try and learn it off them. If you can't do that, learn from books or websites or whatever you can to learn the words, and then try and learn the sentence structure and the way that the great masters use the words. Remember that the blues and the Dorian mode and all of those things are just adding notes to the minor pentatonic scale. If you're playing blues, that's a much better and safer way than thinking it's a different scale altogether. If you know that the A Dorian mode is the same as the G major scale, and you play the G major scale over an A blues, it sucks. It sounds horrible. It's just, it's not related to the blues. So don't do it. So think of the Dorian mode as being the minor pentatonic with some notes added. When you get to the point where you want to think about the chords individually, explore the major pentatonic first. Just the first few notes and learn it around the minor pentatonic so you can switch them between the major pentatonic and the minor pentatonic. And then when you feel like going full on ninja, then you want to learn the arpeggios and trying to learn licks that use the arpeggios that go off of each chord and learn to make the changes that way. Everyone with me on that? Any questions? Can I ask some? Yeah. Yes.
So just taking the analogy one step further.
Yeah.
And we may know a bunch of words, but if we're not stringing together in proper sentence structure,
yeah,
we still sound like we're speaking pidgin English or whatever. Yeah. So maybe you have a couple of thoughts you could share with us about how we make interesting sentences.
Okay, so really good point. Did everyone hear the question? So if you learn a bunch of words and you just put random words together, and I say fridge, magnet, door, carpet, hot dog, you know, it's like, great, well, kind of speaking English, but I don't, again, it doesn't make any sense, right? And it's the same with the blues. Stevie Ray, there's an interview with Stevie Ray Vaughan talking to Albert King about it, which is a really interesting one, and Stevie Ray Vaughan refers it to as a thread. He said everything has to thread together somehow, and it might not be obvious to the listener, it might not, if I'm transcribing a solo, it might not be clear what the thread was. He might have had some sort of distant thread that only he knows, but I know as a transcriber of lots of great solos that there very often is a thread that becomes obvious if you listen. Either the licks have got the same rhythm, a similar note group, a similar style, a similar pause before each of the licks. It can be anything at all can be a tie, a thread that threads all of those things together. And I think that's the magic juice that you're talking about, that if we try and, there are holes in the analogy, but if we try and extend that analogy to music, I think that's the answer. I'm not 100% sure because it's not as clear. If blues had like the and you could learn grammar and conjugate the verbs and all of that, then it would make sense, but it doesn't work the same way. But you should, licks can all be extended and changed around. In that first little demo, I did a whole solo with one lick, but I didn't just play that one lick over and over exactly the same way. So that's where the language analogy falls apart a bit. You can't just take, you know, a word and mix all the letters up and then have another word that makes sense, right? It doesn't. So there are holes in the analogy, right? It's not a perfect one, but it's the best one that I've managed to come up with for this thing. But really good question. Does that help? Yeah?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah?
Variations on themes.
I
say it's variations on a theme.
Yeah, variations on a theme. Yeah. Definitely when you're using a word, you'll probably find that you can get a lot more mileage using one word and lots of variations of it than you will having lots of different words. And again, that can be part of the solution. If you try and just play one word, then another word, then another word, then another word, that can be something that you're practicing, and that's a good thing to practice. But when it comes to the real playing, you're better off probably playing just one word and trying to find lots of different variations of it so that you can put them together in a way that a story might, or a great poem. You know, there's always going to be a thread in a great poem, or in a sentence, even a conversation you have with your friends. You're going to talk about, oh, did you see that nice car? Yeah, the car was red, it was a Lamborghini, it had this, you know, there's going to be similar things, words that you're using on a particular topic, and I think that's, you definitely hear it with guys. Stevie Ray Vaughan's a great example. If you transcribe some of his stuff, he tends to use certain licks a lot in certain songs and never in other songs, which is a really interesting thing. Almost like he's built a whole song around a particular word. So, you know, they couldn't stand the weather out or whatever. You hear a lot of that where there's one lick that seems to keep recurring in a song, but you won't find it in other songs, even on the same record. Yeah?
Can you give us a good example?
A Stevie Ray Vaughan one. So he does this turnaround on the 5. I can't remember what the song is, but that is a great example. I just can't think of the song. I'm sorry. Is it in Pride and Joy? It's the whole phrase. But that's one example of a lick that he uses a lot in one song in a turnaround, but he doesn't tend to use it a lot in other tunes. But you're putting me on the spot a bit there, man. I'm okay at this guitar thing, but my memory is not that great. I can't play all of the songs that I've taught before, if anyone thought that. You know, I learn them and then I practice them and I make a video and then I forget them because I've got to learn the next one. So I disappoint people very regularly. Going, oh man, play songs of swing, and I'm like, I can't remember. Yes, ma'am.
So when you solo, are you thinking in terms of licks, or are you thinking in terms of a theme or some kind of melodic theme?
Neither. So I'm not trying to think at all. Yeah, it comes back to that instinctive thing again. That I don't want to have to think about what I'm playing. Thinking is for the practice room when I'm playing with backing tracks and I'm doing the same things over and over again. To use another weird analogy, I've been into martial arts most of my life, and if I tell you all now that if somebody goes to throw a right punch at you, that the best defense that you can possibly do is just to brush your hand slightly like this and move your head out of the way. So the punch is going to miss you, it's just going to go next to you. Does that help any of you if somebody tries to land you on your way out? No. If we sat down and practice it for 10 minutes, and I sit there and just slowly punch you and you do it, does that help? Not really. If you go to the training hall for an hour or 2 hours a week for 10 years, practicing the same stuff, it's going to help. Because you've just trained up these things to happen kind of reactively. And that's what you're after when you're learning this sort of stuff. And it's not, you're not going to learn the licks in one go, in one sitting, and play the lick 5 times and expect it to come out naturally. It's not realistic. You need to learn a lick, or say 5 licks, put on a backing track and practice using those 5 licks over and over again in as many different ways as you can for 5-10 minutes a day for a month. Then those licks will be so instinctive that they'll just happen and you won't be able to stop them happening. And then you'll be pissed off at yourself for playing the same stuff all the time. And then you have to learn new licks. Because we all have that. I listen to my own solos back and go, oh man, it's the same licks that I was playing like 30 years ago. You know, and sometimes I'm fine with that if I feel like the poetry of it was good. But I still get bored of myself. We all have that. And the solution is learning new licks. When I feel like that, I learn new licks. And then I practice using them and I've got some new stuff. And I get excited about it for a little while and then I get bored of it and then I learn some more licks. And from my speaking to players that I consider a lot better than me, they do the same thing. Larry Carlton said as much. You know, how do you keep it interesting? I keep learning new stuff. You know, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be Larry Carlton and to have that breadth of knowledge and ability and tone and everything else. But he's still learning new things. Gets bored of his own playing. Like, what? You know, so I think that's the answer. It's a never-ending journey, unfortunately. You know.
Could you give us a few variations on something? Maybe Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix or something?
So the question,
variations.
yeah, I mean, I can't play like Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan and try to mix the two together in a workshop like right now with an acoustic guitar. I'm just not sure I can. I think I'd just disappoint you guys and disappoint myself if I tried that. But yeah, the very first round I did was a variation, but I could try it. And let's finish with some playing anyway. So let's do the slow blues thing, maybe in G, but with the standard 5-4-1-5 thing. I'm not going to be offended if you've got to go. That's all right. It's okay. Oh, I know you. Hello, sir. How are you? Yeah, okay. See you later. There's somebody really good on over the road, isn't there? Who is it? Oh, it's 5 o'clock. Hang on. Who is it? There's somebody really good playing at 5 o'clock. Oh, John Gong. Acoustic guitar wizard dude. Okay. So I'll leave you. Let's just play a blues in G, slow one. And I'll try and do variations on a theme. I'm just trying to think of what a decent theme is. I guess it'll just happen as it happens. Thank you very much for coming along. I'll be in chat with you afterwards if you want to come.